The Mayor and City Council welcome you to the Peoria City Council meeting. As a courtesy to others, please silence all phones. If you would like to address an issue that is on the agenda, or if you would like to speak to the council regarding a non-agenda item, please complete a speaker request form, which can be found in the front lobby of the Peoria City Council chambers or in the tray to the left of the speaker's podium. Please place the completed speaker request form in the second tray to the left of the speaker's podium labeled Request to Speak. All speakers will have 3 minutes to complete their comments. A countdown clock is easily visible on the left side of the wall behind the City Council dais. Only items listed on the agenda may be addressed by the Council. Since items presented as part of a speaker's request have not been listed on the agenda, and due to the requirements of open meeting laws, the Council will be unable to respond to items presented as part of the speaker's request. However, please be aware that your comments will be noted. The speaker's name will be called to speak at the appropriate time in the order that the forms were received. Thank you for your interest and participation in the Peoria City Council meeting.
Peoria City Council meeting will now come to order. Please rise for a moment of quiet reflection and the Pledge of Allegiance led by Councilmember Edwards.
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The clerk will please call the roll.
Mayor Carlett.
Here.
Vice Mayor Patena.
here.
Councilmember Finn.
Here.
Councilmember Dunn.
Here.
Councilmember Hunt. Here. Councilmember Binswanger.
Here.
Councilmember Edwards.
Here.
Youth Liaison Fierro.
Here.
And Youth Liaison Rodriguez.
Here.
Welcome to the Peoria City Council meeting of January 18th, 2022. If anyone would like to address an issue that is on the agenda, or if you would like to speak regarding a non-agenda item, we have speaker request forms available in the lobby or next to the speaker's podium, or you can receive them from the clerk. Please complete the form and return it to the clerk. The first item on our agenda this evening is a presentation regarding the Mayor and Council's Young Artists Program. Prior to this meeting, we held a reception for the winners of the Young Artist Program, and we had the pleasure of meeting the artists and their families. Tonight, we will be honoring each of them. We do this because I believe that a city is not complete without a strong sense of the arts. Public art instills a meaning of sense of identity and place in the places that we live, work, and play, and it personalizes our environment. Personalizes our environment, I'll get that right. And it helps us to thrive as a community. So thank you all for being here. Thank you for supporting your kids, your artists, and to the artists, congratulations on making a difference in our community, and we're very happy to have you here. And so now I would like to welcome Mary Lou Stevens, the Arts and Events Manager, to the podium, as she is already ready to go. And she's going to help with the presentation, and then I'm going to invite our Youth Council liaisons, Fierro and Rodriguez, to join her in the front to help with the presentations.
Thank you, Mayor Carlett and Council. I am honored to be here this evening. As the Arts and Culture Manager for the City of Peoria, it is my honor to recognize artistic talent in our community, but most importantly, give opportunity for everyone to be a part of the artistic endeavors throughout our community. And it starts with our youngest members. We are graced by the fact that Peoria Unified School District already has an outstanding arts program, and they continue to achieve in this area. And our partnership with them goes back many, many years. This particular program is something that Mayor Carlett started in 2016. So this is the 11th time we've done this. And what a great way to show our community how important the arts are, how important education is, and how important the next generation of our students are. So with that, I'd like to introduce Robert Panzer, the Director of Arts Education with Peoria Unified School District, to join me here so we can present these wonderful students their certificates and bring them up here and get some great pictures. And we will be showing the artwork in a PowerPoint. So, Mr. Panzer.
Well, thank you. It certainly is my pleasure to be here tonight, and we are just so grateful for the partnership that we have with the city of Peoria and all of the arts work that we do together to support our students and our community. It certainly, as you said, is something that makes our community better. So thank you for the opportunity to be here and to celebrate these incredible 22 young artists that we have with us tonight. Starting off with Apache Elementary School, Xenia Sledge. And Andrew Fastrup. From Cheyenne Elementary, Dela Barraza. And Sawyer Harris. From Cotton Bowl Elementary, Jaylee Dees. And Samantha Machado. From Coyote Hills, Ali Alarubi. And Mallory Sardella. From Desert Harbor Elementary, Kylie Webb. And Marissa Walker Dietzler. From Frontier Elementary, Becca McClary. And also Lucas Lakatos. From Ira Murphy Elementary, Amelia Rogers. And Ivan Begay. From Lake Pleasant Elementary, Dutch Jarrett. Austin Rollins. Also from Lake Pleasant Elementary, Camden Kiata. From Oakwood Elementary, Levi Martin. Alec Hinderer. And Fiona Baker. From Oasis Elementary, Kai Bowden. And Ashley Wudowski. Congratulations to all of our young artists, and I know that Mary Lou has some very special words about one artist in particular, so I will certainly turn the floor over.
First of all, can we get another round of applause for these talented students and for their incredible teachers? I think you saw an array of incredibly diverse art, and this is a real testament to the art education that's happening right here in Peoria. So congratulations to the teachers as well. And now, as you can see on your screen, we have a very exciting award to recognize. I want to tell you a little bit about the West Valley Art Museum. The West Valley Art Museum, now in its 42nd year of operation, is proud to have partnered with the City of Peoria for over a decade in providing a variety of fine arts exhibits and programs in the West Valley Art Gallery right here on the City Hall, well, actually across the way in our City Hall campus. And with that, we also have been very blessed to have them collaborate on many different projects. The gallery actually reopens this coming Monday, January 24th, with a very special showcase on the art of Wonderland with the magical references to Lewis Carroll's Alice in Wonderland series. It is truly not to be missed. If you had the opportunity to see the immersive experience Curiouser and Curiouser at TheaterWorks, you'll love seeing these pieces up close and personal. If you missed seeing the immersive experience, you'll still love seeing these pieces. So I encourage you to come back. That'll be on through the end of March. Every year, the West Valley Art Museum selects one piece of art out of all, how do you even pick one out of the 22? They were all amazing, but they have that difficult task, not me, and they chose this beautiful piece by Becca McClary, an 8th grader from Frontier Elementary School. So Becca has the unique opportunity of having her art piece shown in the West Valley Art Museum along with the Curiouser and Curiouser exhibit through March. So congratulations, Becca. And with that, we will close this presentation, and we thank you so much, Mayor and Council, for all of your support and really highlighting the importance of arts in our community. Thank you.
Thank you, and congratulations again to all of our talented artists. All right. This is the final call to submit speaker request forms. If anyone would like to address an issue that is on the agenda, or if you would like to speak regarding a non-agenda item, we have speaker request forms, as I've said before, in the lobby next to the speaker's podium or from the clerk. Please fill out a form and give it to the clerk, and you will be recognized at the appropriate time. We will now move on to the consent agenda. All items listed on the consent agenda are considered to be routine or have been previously reviewed and or discussed by the City Council and will be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items. If the presiding officer receives a timely notice of a request for removal, an item may be removed from the consent agenda for consideration on the regular agenda. Additionally, tonight's consent agenda includes items posted as a public hearing. If there is any member of the public present who wants to address a public hearing on the consent agenda, please complete a speaker request form and place it in the bin next to the speaker's podium. The item will be removed from consent and heard during the regular agenda. Is there a member of the public that would like to address a public hearing on the consent agenda? Seeing none, Council, are there any items to be removed from consent? All right, is there a motion on the consent agenda? So moved. We have a motion and a second. And a second. Council, please vote. And the consent agenda passes unanimously. We will now move on to the regular agenda and new business. We will begin with item 11R, which is fiscal year 2021 annual comprehensive financial report and auditor communications. We'll start with a staff report from Mr. Tyne.
Great, thank you, Mayor and Council. And we have Kevin Burke, our Chief Financial Officer, who will introduce our auditor and present the results of the annual financial report. Pass it to Mr. Burke.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Again, Kevin Burke from the Finance Department. My pleasure to introduce tonight our auditor from Clifton Larson Allen, Mr. Dennis Osuch. He has some very good news to present, so I won't give a spoiler. I'll just turn it right over and have him jump into the material.
All right, thank you, Kevin. Thank you, Mayor and Council. So we performed the audit for the fiscal year ended June 30th, 2021. And so I'll just get right to the chase. We issued an unmodified opinion, which is a clean opinion on the financial statements. Our purpose in conducting the audit of the financial statements, one, it's required, but two, our responsibility in looking at those financial statements is performing procedures to determine that the financial statements are presented in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. And so as part of that audit, there's several things that we do. Our first step is really to assess risk. Every organization has risk, and if an organization tells me they don't have risk, then there's probably more risk than I thought. But we go through and we assess risk, and so we identify some of the areas where there are some higher risks within the organization. Just as an example of some of those areas that we look at and we perform more detailed testing would be things like cash receipts, just because they're more susceptible to fraud. We look at completed construction. It's not a fraud risk, but it is a significant risk because it goes directly to the valuation of the capital assets. And if the project's completed and not taken out of construction in progress, it's not being depreciated over a period of time. So there's a lot of different areas that we look at to identify that risk. And the way that we go about doing that is one, through interviews with staff, with members of governance. We also we get an understanding of what the controls are that are in place in the organization. And then we'll do walkthroughs or we'll do test of controls. And the purpose of that is really just to identify how well those controls are operating and how much we can actually rely on those controls that are being performed. And so we didn't have any findings related to controls that we identified during the audit, which helps to assess that risk to be able to lower that risk in some of the areas. For those areas where we do identify higher risk, we do perform detailed tests of transactions, or we'll perform some other detailed test where we're actually specifically addressing that risk. It doesn't mean that we're not looking at other account balances. We're performing other procedures on some of those account balances. Some of them may be limited to analytical procedures. Some of them may be a little bit more detailed just because we can get confirmation of account balances through some of those, such as like cash investments or revenues that are coming in through the state treasurer. So that's our purpose in the audit, is really just to give an opinion on the financial statements, that they're presented in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. And so as I mentioned, we were able to issue a clean opinion on that. The other responsibility that we have is we do what's called a single audit. And this is an audit of major federal programs that are identified. That audit has not been completed yet. The federal government actually just recently, within like the last week or week and a half, issued the final guidance on especially some of the COVID money and ARPA money that was issued or handed out. So we really could not perform some of that test work. Those audits aren't due until March 31st. And so we're in the process right now of completing that single audit. I think we have 4 or 5 major programs that we'll be looking at as part of that audit as well. So that'll be issued at a later date. Typically, we like to issue that at the same time, but unfortunately, with the financial report being due by December 31st and the guidance not being issued for single audit until after December 31st, it made that a little difficult to do. But we are performing that currently. I'm not going to get into detail on all of the reports, but if you have any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer any questions that council might have.
Council, do you have any questions? I just have one question with regards to all the federal funding that came in. Is your job to determine if it was spent in compliance with the federal guidelines that were put in place?
That's correct. Yeah, so in general, there's about 14 different compliance requirements related to the federal grants. Each agency identifies 7 that they want auditors to look at specifically. So we're not looking at the same 14 for every grant. They'll identify pretty much every grant wants us to look at activities allowed and unallowed to ensure that the funds were spent for allowable activities. But some of the other areas that we may look at based on what the agency is requesting us to audit would be cash management, financial reporting, subrecipient monitoring, and they have special tests and provisions as well, too.
Okay, thank you. All right.
So just a big thanks. I want to Sean Kindle at the other end of the table is our Deputy Finance Director and oversees our accounting team. So just a big thanks to he and all of his folks, because they did a lot of extra hours, particularly, balancing with remote working at times and various COVID activities, as well as trying to keep on touch of all the grant dollars that have been coming in and getting them in the right place so that we'd be ready for the audit. But a clean opinion, no findings. We're very happy.
Good
Thank you.
news. Great. Thank you. Thanks very much. Okay, so council, is there any further discussion? No? All right. Is there a motion on an item 11R?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Please vote. And it passes unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we will now begin a series of public hearings, so I'm going to be banging this gavel a lot. 12R, and we will probably be hearing this in conjunction with 13R. 12R is Annexation, Rovey Farms, 83rd Avenue and Northern Avenue, and 13R is the initial zoning for Rovey Farms, 83rd Avenue and Northern Avenue. Mr. Tyne?
Thank you, Mayor and Council. And the initial public hearing was held by the council on January 4th, 2022, and we'll have Chris Hawkes, our Planning and Community Development Director, to present on this annexation ordinance. Thank you, Mr. Hawkes.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Tyne, and good evening, Mayor and Council. The next 4 items on the agenda, as you indicated, pertain to the Rovey family property, or what will thereafter be referred to as Legacy Point. Items 12R and 13R, this will pertain to the annexation and initial zoning. So I'll do a presentation on this one, entertain a couple actions. The next presentation will be on the general plan amendment and rezoning case. So the applicant here is the Rovey family, and the request pertains to approximately 204 gross acres, and it's identified in blue on the screen, roughly bounded by Northern on the southern boundary, 83rd on the west, Butler on the north, and 77th Avenue as the eastern boundary. Altogether, the intent would be to incorporate the annexed land into a larger 346-acre master plan called Legacy Point that features a mix of residential, industrial, and commercial and mixed-use land use. This graphic illustrates where we are in the annexation and initial zoning process. The procedures here, they're rather perfunctory. They're laid out pretty explicitly in state statute. On the annexation side, or the middle of the graphic, we filed the blank petition with the county, and we held the initial public hearing back on January 4th of this year. We have collected the authorized signature from the property owner, which in this case was only one. It was the Rovey family. And now we have the annexation ordinance before you. On the initial zoning side, state statute requires that we assign translational zoning within 6 months of annexation. So on the next slide, I'll show you what the translational zoning looks like. It's only going to be in place momentarily because then we'll ask you to consider a rezone of the entire master plan, including the area to be annexed. Okay, the graphic that you see on the screen on the left, that's the existing county zoning, and you can see most of the area is zoned RU43 or Rural 43. It's 1 acre lot zoning. And then that corner at 83rd and Northern is zoned heavy industrial in the county. On the right would be what the proposed city translational zoning would be, and our RU43 would be Suburban Ranch 43, also 1 acre zoning. And then at that hard corner, I2 or heavy industrial. Okay, for initial zoning, the outreach process is a little different from a standard rezone. While we still provide the notice of application and notice of hearing to all properties within a quarter-mile radius, we also provide an ad in our paper that the one difference is there is no neighborhood meeting required with the initial zoning since it's pretty perfunctory, as I mentioned. We have not received any opposition or support on the initial zoning or annexation case. The key findings are that the annexed land is within the city of Peoria planning area. We have the ability to serve the area. And we have proposed a translational zoning that would not assign greater densities or uses that was in place with the county zoning. So Mayor and Council, with that, there are 2 actions. The first one is the annexation ordinance, and then the second one would be to adopt the initial zoning as indicated. And with that, I can take any questions.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Mr. Hawkes? All right, seeing none, I declare this public hearing open. This is a public hearing. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to address this public hearing? Speak now or forever hold your peace. All right, seeing none, I will close this public hearing. And council, if there is no further discussion, we will take a vote on item 12R first. This is the annexation, Rovey Farms, 83rd Avenue and Northern Avenue. Make a motion?
Yes, I move that we accept item 13R, the initial zoning of the property described.
12R. We're on 12R.
Oh, I need better glasses. 12R.
Annexation. Is your motion on 12R?
Yes.
Okay, is there a second? Second. We have a motion and a second. Council, please vote. And that passes unanimously. And now we will do the same thing on item 13R, which is initial zoning, Rovey Farms, 83rd Avenue and Northern Avenue. The public hearing was for both of those. And so, council, if there are no further comments, is there a motion on 13R?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Council, please vote. And it passes unanimously. Thank you. We will now move on to items 14R and 15R, which are also public hearings. 14R is a minor general plan amendment, Legacy Point, 83rd Avenue and Northern. And 15 is rezone, Legacy Point, 83rd Avenue and Northern. Mr. Tyne?
Right, yeah, and as mentioned, Mr. Hawkins will remain at the table to present on these two additional items seeking approval, a general plan amendment and a rezoning for what is termed Legacy Point.
Great, thanks again, Mr. Tyne, and good evening, Mayor and Council. This is part 2 of the presentation, and this is the exciting part of the presentation. So we're going to talk about the portion of the land that was just annexed collectively with the portion of the Rovey family land that's in the city. So again, it's all the land that's represented in gray or blue on the screen there. Collectively, it's 346 acres in area. So it was the vision of the Rovey family. They did not want to see their land sold off piecemeal, but rather come together with a master planned effort. And that's what we have here tonight. They've identified partners through Shea Homes and also Van Trust Real Estate. This master plan called Legacy Point is identified on the screen, and it's generally bounded by 83rd, Butler, Northern, and on the eastern side, generally 75th Avenue. So as I mentioned, the master plan proposes a mix of uses, industrial, single-family residential, and mixed-use commercial. We'll talk more about the development plan in a second here. The plan is that Shea Homes will incrementally buy and develop the single-family residential portion of the project, and Van Trust Real Estate will develop the industrial business park portion of the project. They're all here in the audience, along with the representative, Paul Gilbert, from Buse Gilbert McGroder. So again, as a summary before the two requests before us, 14R is a minor general plan amendment. It proposes to amend the area that's identified in blue, 78 acres from employment, business, commerce to traditional residential. That's the minor general plan amendment. And then the rezone is for the overall 346 acre property, and that proposes to rezone the property from suburban ranch, portion of intermediate commercial and light industrial, heavy industrial, all to a planned area development. So for the audience that may be watching, the planned area development, this is a customized type of zoning district that is intended to respond to the development program and any boundary conditions with the purpose of maximizing compatibility in the area. So there's the ability to customize the standards for the development program. Again, the 346 acres is delineated in red. The existing use on the property, this is a long-standing dairy and agricultural operation. This is unique to this particular site. It takes some time to develop each piece of the property. As such, we wanted to recognize that the collaboration in place, that is the dairy operation, will continue on the balance of the property and will only cease on the property as the project develops and builds out. So if a residential parcel came in for development, it would cease on that development parcel, but would continue on the balance of the property again until the overall build out of Legacy Point, which will take place over time. So in looking at the land uses in the area, to the west is 83rd Avenue. There are some single-family residential land uses. On the northern side is Butler Road, which is a collector, and Pioneer Park, and in Peoria Industrial Park, that's just east of that. On the eastern side is 75th Avenue, some vacant property, and then also, as you know, the SRP Agua Fria generating station on the eastern side. And then on the south, Northern Avenue, and some vacant residential property south of Northern Avenue. So a few other things to point out in the area, with residential areas to the west and Pioneer Park in the proximity, this creates opportunities for further land use transition and also further activation of the park. The site also contains a 300-foot wide overhead power line easement that essentially bisects the property. So while this does create phasing lines when we consider development of the property, it also provides opportunities for connectivity throughout the project and east and west. Finally, while we are deliberating on the 346 acres of Rovey family within the development, I think it's also as a point of context to note, there's also 126 acres of land owned by the Rovey family that's south of Northern in the Glendale planning area. So they are working with the city of Glendale on an annexation and master plan effort in that community as well. And overall, the idea would be to have a unified master plan development. From a conceptual development plan standpoint, the desire by the project team is to create a master plan project with the uses as mentioned. As I mentioned, the residential project, or the residential portion, will be led by Shea Homes and Van Trust Real Estate for the industrial portion. So on the screen, you can see a delineation of the land uses in blue. That is the industrial portion that represents about 175 acres. The lower left-hand portion of the project in red, that is 20 acres, and that's a future mixed-use commercial node. And the areas that are in yellow, orange, and purple, that represents the residential portion. That's about 150 acres. What the different colors in the residential portion signify is the phasing. I'll go over that a little bit later, but essentially, the orange would be phase 1 at about 79th Avenue. Phase 2 would be the purple, and then phase 3 would be the yellow area that's just north of the power lines all the way up to the park site. Now, as it pertains to the minor general plan amendment, the area is approximately 78 acres. Again, it's identified in blue around Northern Avenue and 79th Avenue. This provides for the unified master plan, as we indicated also when considering the residential area south of Glendale, south of Northern rather, in Glendale. From a contextual standpoint, when considering a change, staff, as we do our evaluation, we look at the overall context and not just the area affected. We want to see how it all fits together. Now, the area has evolved, and I think a major point of evolution was with the insertion of the Pioneer Park in this area. That changed the complexion of the area, if you will. Secondly, 83rd Avenue has become a regional gateway and a major transit corridor through the city. So residential adjacent to 83rd Avenue and also adjacent to the park, not only compatible but deemed desirable in the general plan. So it would not be uncommon or against the general plan if the area was to transition to residential. But overall, what it does is it provides for a condensed and balanced plan. Even the prospect of a master plan, we can say, has piqued the interest for this master plan from a variety of users. From the rezoning standpoint, this graphic identifies the existing zoning on the property. So the area in yellow is the Suburban Ranch 43. The area in gray is I-2 heavy industrial. And the areas that were in the city prior to the area coming in from the annexation were zoned light industrial and C2, which is intermediate commercial. I should mention that that zoning has been in place for about 41 years. It was rezoned back in 1981 there. So the purpose of the planned area development, this would be a brand new PAD. This creates the opportunity for a whole new set of standards that create a desirable residential community with some integration with the industrial. So it provides that unified master plan that we're looking for with standards that provide for an appropriate transition between the land uses. Okay, for each, what I'll do is then take a look at each portion of the PAD. We'll start with the residential portion first. Again, this is about 151 acres. This represents up to 497 units that are proposed, which provides for a corresponding density of about 3.3 units per acre. So that would be right in the range of what is within the general plan category there. To provide for a diversity in product type, there are 4 lot sizes provided, and they range from 4,600 square feet to 7,200 square feet minimum lot size. And so on the screen, you can see the different lot sizes, and they're driven by the lot width. So for example, R1640 PAD means you have a 40-foot wide lot. At the high end, a 60 PAD would mean a 60-foot wide lot there. Overall, 28% of this portion is open space, and that includes the SRP corridor. This provides opportunities for trail linkages within the project and also east-west across to 83rd Avenue. 10% of the site would also be what we call usable, or rather activated open space. So this is threaded throughout the project in a manner that provides for amenity within walking distance to each unit. That's the whole concept here. This also provides for a primary amenity area in the middle that's punctuated by a community pool, an outdoor kitchen, playground, and shade structures. So I'll show some imagery of what that is contemplated to look like. So the first image is a bird's eye view, and this is if you were looking down and you're looking at Northern on the southern area. And if you look in the middle of the graphic, that is 79th Avenue, and that's the collector that would be built, and that provides a little curvilineal entry into the development. You can see the power line corridor bisecting this portion in the middle. The next graphic, this is an illustration of the potential architectural styles that are envisioned within the development. This graphic showcases some of the open spaces and the entry points. So if we start at the upper left-hand corner, that's looking into the development at 79th and Northern. That's what you would see there. Going down to the bottom left-hand corner, that is a trail corridor through the SRP connection. At the upper right-hand corner, that's the primary amenity area in the middle of the project. That's with the community pool, the outdoor kitchen, and related open space. And then the area to the bottom right-hand corner, that's one of the open space areas within the project. Okay, I'm going to transition real quick to the mixed-use commercial component. And again, this is the area in orange. This is at the hard corner of Northern 83rd Avenue. This is about 20 acres. It's at the northeast corner. You may recall the general plan designation for this property is mixed-use neighborhood village. So appropriately within the PAD are uses and standards that would advance that general plan designation. So this contemplates a variety but integrated mix of land uses. The mix could be horizontally integrated or they could be vertical integrated. Vertical integrated means, typically means residential above retail. The development form would have a mix of commercial, employment, and higher density residential. So in the standards in the PAD, while it can be all commercial, it could not be all multifamily. So there is a limitation that if multifamily comes in, it's no more than 50% of the gross parcel area of it. So the whole idea is to get a commercial development or some integration of residential and commercial on that parcel. So now moving over to the industrial component. From the industrial use standpoint, this application consolidates the industrial intensity and maximizes the potential for employment, particularly along 75th Avenue, in purple on the screen. The standards in the PAD, they're based upon the city's I-1 or light industrial district with some modifications that respond to today's expectations. So I'm going to show you some imagery. This really speaks to the character that is contemplated. The color and design expectations attempt to create unity within the project, but also recognize the operational and functional differences that create that branding, but also respond to more of an industrial and business park product that we would be seeing. And here are some other conceptual elevations that we could potentially see in the industrial portion. Let's talk about the phased improvements. So the city and the project team, they worked together to identify an appropriate timing of infrastructure. And it was quite a collaboration because there's quite a bit of timing and considerations in mind here. So this was a unique development project that attempted to work within the phases, but also accommodate the ongoing nature of the existing dairy and agricultural operations. So part of why you might, when you look at the stipulations in your staff report, you see several pages of stipulations. This is an acknowledgement of the timing of when parcels developed without hindering dairy operations in a phased manner. So in particular, what I'll do is I'll try to provide some of the major infrastructure points. Certainly not going to talk to all of the infrastructure points. They're pretty well enumerated in the staff report there. But when we talk about phase one residential, I mentioned at the northwest corner of 79th and Northern, that would be phase one. The developer would be responsible for the access point on 79th Avenue going into the development, and also extending the sidewalk from 79th all the way over to 83rd. So that would be part of that project. Phase two would be the area to the northeast of 79th, south of the power line corridor, and that would be to extend the sidewalk to the property boundary along Northern. As you can see, there's also some roundabouts that are part of that character. Also, they would be responsible to extend 79th Avenue at that point all the way to Butler, near the Pioneer Park, and also provide the requisite right turn lanes and medians and so forth. I should mention too that there is a stipulation that the traffic signal be designed and constructed as part of phase two of the project. That's when there's enough trips that are generated. And also, we happen to have, as I mentioned before, they're also developing the southern part of Northern and Glendale. So actually, the Shea Homes would be developing all four corners of that intersection there. So that makes that part of the project a lot more seamless there. So that would be part of phase two of the project. Continuing on the phases, phase three, that's the portion north of the power line corridor by Pioneer Park, so they would be responsible for the half-street improvements along Butler Drive, some pedestrian crossings to get users to the park, and also for frontage improvements along 83rd Avenue. 83rd Avenue in that portion is a county roadway, so they would have to coordinate the improvements with the county and also with the city as well. The industrial and mixed-use components, those are really driven by market demand, but they would have to update their traffic impact analysis as each phase of the project comes in. Okay, let's talk about public outreach on this one. This was also, we provide a notice of application when the project comes in, and also prior to it going to public hearing, and also prior to a neighborhood meeting. And that's mailed to all property owners within a quarter-mile radius, and all registered HOAs within a mile. We publish an ad in the paper, and then we require that the site be posted in multiple places on the property there. So a neighborhood meeting was held on August 12th at 5:30 via a remote platform. There were 19 participants at the meeting, and that included city representatives, SRP representatives, and residents. Actually, I think it was one resident at the meeting. The resident asked for clarification on the mixed-use definition. Most of the discussion was from SRP, and they asked about the project and really requested that as the project develops that there be a good coordination between the development team and SRP. The city has not received any correspondence in opposition or support, and within your packet, we did receive a letter from the Peoria Unified School District. They have participated in the review, and they have been in communication with the applicant. The letter in your packet identifies that the district is in support of the rezoning of the property to facilitate development. They note that the developer and the school district will continue to work on a voluntary developer assistance agreement as part of that development plan. Okay, this brings me to the key findings for the general plan amendment and the rezone. We believe the amendment is in conformance with the general plan. The traditional residential land use category, again, for those 78 acres rather, balances the city's economic interest, but also provides a unified and integrated residential framework that capitalizes on existing public assets. And then on the rezoning findings, the PAD is in conformance with the general plan, provides for a variety of housing types and opportunities for different lifestyle options, provides appropriate open space, good connectivity throughout the project, and also for good industrial standards that meet market conditions for the industrial uses that we're seeing today. They've also provided a Proposition 207 waiver, and with that, we enthusiastically are recommending the council take two actions. The action for 14R would be to approve the minor general plan amendment as recommended by staff and the Planning and Zoning Commission. And then the 15R is the rezone, and that we're recommending that we also approve the rezone of the entire 346 acres, again, as recommended by Planning Commission and staff, subject to conditions 1 through 9 in your report. With that, I will take any questions.
Thank you. Councilor, are there any questions for Mr. Hawkes?
I have a question.
Councilmember Hunt first.
Thanks for that great presentation. And a special thanks to all of you, those back in the audience and others that have worked so diligently over a couple years on this project. This is an exciting thing to happen in South Peoria, and I'm very, very proud of the way it's coming together, the way that it's looking. I'm proud of Rovies for holding out and making sure that it was a compact unit when they finally let their land go, and for the quality people that are coming in that are already interested. They're already ready as soon as we get done here to start shoveling that dirt. So it's with a great deal of pride and excitement that I recommend item 14R, the minor general plan amendment, be adopted.
Thank you. Vice Mayor?
Thank you, Mayor. Chris, one question. The commercial section of this property is going to be relatively close to residential. Do we have any idea the type of businesses that we might be getting in to that commercial area?
Vice Mayor Patena, members of council, there isn't any identified development plan or user for that corner right now, but when we went through the PAD document, the potential commercial users are based on the city's C2 or intermediate commercial zoning district with a number of deletions. So there are some uses that are permitted in our C2 district that we went through and thought maybe they weren't appropriate at that corner that were eliminated from the PAD. So it's kind of a modified C2 district.
Councilmember Dunn?
Chris, how many acres are going to be rezoned from into residential out of that 346 acres?
Councilmember Dunn, members of the council. So in the PAD, let me refer back to one of my exhibits, I believe 151 acres are residential of the entire PAD. 175 acres are industrial business park, and then 20 acres of the hard corner are the commercial mixed use.
Thank you.
Youth Council Liaison Fierro?
Hi, I just want to get clarification real quick. You said that according to Peoria Unified School District, the project boundaries lie within Kellis High School and which elementary school?
Great question. Cotton Bowl Elementary School.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments?
I already made the motion.
Seeing none, I am going to declare this public hearing open. And this public hearing is both for 14 and 15. Any members of the public who would like to address this hearing? I have received a speaker request form from Mr. Paul Gilbert. If you would kindly state your name and address for the record, we would appreciate it, sir.
Surely. Paul Gilbert, 701 North 44th Street, Phoenix, Arizona. What a pleasure it is to be here this evening for this very large and exciting project. A couple of observations. First of all, Chris, I'm going to have to reduce my fee to Shay tonight because he covered so many of the good points. I don't want to be redundant, and will be very brief in the naive hope that my brevity will be rewarded. But very good job of making the presentation, as usual, Chris. This is a complex project. It started out with a plethora of challenges. First of all, the seller. They had certain restrictions, and it had to all be done together. Two, you're a project that covers two municipal jurisdictions, Peoria and Glendale. They had to be coordinated. We had to work together. Third, there was a real concern, and it was made very evident by everyone we met with when we first started, was that we do not want this property to go forward and a lot of homes being built and the industrial forgotten about. And there was a real potential for that. So how to coordinate that and make it happen? We were told right at the outset that they knew that Shay was not an industrial developer, which is true. And they, meaning your staff, made it very clear to us and certain members of the city council that they didn't want to go forward with just a naked user for the residential. They wanted to see something for the industrial as well. And so what's happened is Shay reached out, and now we formed a partnership with Van Trust, a very sagacious and experienced industrial developer, and we're very thrilled to have them. They're here represented tonight. And I'm happy to say that the industrial is moving along with the equal dispatch to the residential, and we already have a significant user pretty well wrapped up and ready to go for the industrial. So you're going to have the industrial developed simultaneously with the multifamily. That was a big challenge and not an easy one to bring to fruition, so we were able to do that. I also submit, how many times do you have a project, and I'm going to say this is in effect an infill project, of 346 acres where, one, there's no one here in opposition. Two, we had a neighborhood meeting, and the only person other than all the staff members and Salt River Project members, and there were a legion of them, incidentally, but only one member of the public showed up, and they didn't have any opposition. They just had a lot of questions, which we were able to answer. So you've got an infill project, 346 acres, a general plan amendment, and a large zoning case with no opposition, and concomitantly, and of equal importance in my judgment, you have a list of stipulations that we are agreeing to. It vindicates how well and closely your staff and this developer have been able to work together. That's a significant accomplishment. This isn't my first zoning case. But I don't think I've had too many cases of 346 acres where I haven't got up and had to fight a few stipulations and ask for a few other changes. Not true. We are here unequivocally in support of all of your stipulations. So this has been a labor of very significant cooperation on both sides. And as a result, I think we have come in with a very good product. And I will also admit and state for the record that this project is better because of the input we've received from you and from your staff. So we stand before you in the posture this evening of no opposition, complete support, unanimous Planning Commission support, and a very brief presentation from the zoning attorney. Be happy to answer any other questions that you wish to share.
Council, are there any questions for Mr. Gilbert? Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you. My kind of case.
Well, I would just like to also thank the Rovey family. They are a long, long time family that means the world to the city of Peoria. We are very happy that you finally found a project that you can be proud of, and thank you for working with this developer on this. It looks like a really successful endeavor. So with that, I will close this public hearing. Council, any further discussion? All right, seeing none, we will take item 14R first, minor general plan amendment, Legacy Point, 83rd Avenue and Northern Avenue. Do we already have a motion on that?
Yes.
Okay, we have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Council, please vote. And that passes unanimously. And now we will move to item 15R, which is the rezone, Legacy Point, 83rd Avenue and Northern Avenue. Is there a motion?
Yes, Mayor, I move that we accept item 15R to rezone from suburban ranch and heavy industrial to planned area development.
All right, is there a second? Second. Motion and a second. Council, please vote. And it passes unanimously. Thank you all very much. All right, we will now move on to item 16R, budget amendment, use of reserves, finance call center improvements, City Hall. Mr. Tyne.
Thank you. We have Ed Striffler, Architectural Services Manager, who will discuss a proposed budget amendment and use of reserves for this previously approved capital project. So pass to Mr. Striffler. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tyne, and good evening, Mayor and Council. I'll be presenting items 16R and 17R in a combined presentation on behalf of the Peoria Finance Department and the Peoria Fire Medical Departments this evening. Excuse me, sorry. Both of these prior approved CIP projects are going to ask the council to consider additional funding resources for the same reasons, which I'll cover in the first part of the presentation tonight. For the benefit of the council and our viewing citizens, I'll be discussing some of the significant impacts in the construction market right now and how several of them have challenged Peoria construction projects over the last year. After the first portion of the presentation, I'll present details of the finance call center improvements and then the details of the Fire Station Number 5 renovation project. Finance Director Kevin Burke and Deputy Fire Chief Rob Brewster are here in the audience this evening, should we need to call upon them for any questions. So let's proceed forward. Whether your source of information is the radio, the television, the newspaper, or the internet, there's some very real news out there right now that we find ourselves in a period of steep economic inflation fueled by international, national, and even some local forces. Early headlines in the pandemic were focused on factory shutdowns and disruptions to the supply of goods and materials. Shortages of our toilet paper and our cleaning supplies have since evolved to shortages of building materials as global production struggles to catch up from its period of constraint. And at the same time, it faces a steep climb in construction spending. As the workforce returns to work, we hear both encouraging, but at the same time also concerning news of attractive wages and the movement of people into newer, different jobs than they previously had. I'll talk more about the impacts of that wage growth in just a few minutes. In Peoria, as part of metropolitan Phoenix, we're fortunate to witness strong economic recovery with industries like multifamily housing, semiconductor, and industrial logistics blossoming and booming in construction. In construction, we were human resource constrained before the pandemic, and the issue is now even more challenging post-pandemic, if we can use that term post-pandemic. We're hopeful. We all hope that the current cloud of Omicron that we're in now proves to only be a minor bump in the road in our economic and our personal wellness recovery. But even Peoria as an employer is experiencing productivity challenge as we find COVID in our workforce. So though my presentation tonight, is focused on our vertical building construction, my peers in the horizontal construction are experiencing many of the same things that I'll be speaking about. At the national level, we're seeing the broader headlines about climbing costs of raw materials and commodities, which then trickle down into the manufacturing process and into more expensive shipping containers, more expensive trucking, fueled with more expensive fuel, and then on to our job sites. Our go-to industry reports that we look to when forecasting and trying to estimate in the CIP help us to look back at the prior year with great clarity, but only can do so well looking forward, and none of them predicted the steep inflationary climb that we find ourselves on. Our contractors are regularly receiving letters like the one you see in the screen, this one dated December 1st, speaking to a Monday, January 3rd, 2022 increase with percentages of 30 and 50% for products. That's unbelievable. So in fire station number 2, just under a year ago, while we had to wait for a custom door for a fire station bay, that wasn't the end of the world. But now even the products most common to us, like the sheetrock that you see on our ceilings and our walls, these and sheathing materials on buildings, these are the hot commodity. They're coming with these double-digit increases, and more concerning, they're being rationed to the construction market. This is happening while we're trying to bid projects and trying to hold pricing long enough to get the contracts awarded, and then by extension, the general contractors awarding their subcontracts. Some headlines on the screen, some of these may look familiar, close to home. Here in Metro Phoenix, but even closer to us in the Northwest Valley, we're seeing the impacts of just crazy growth in multifamily. Industrial manufacturing and logistics being one of our booming areas. We just saw Mr. Hawkes talk about the potential for that, and I believe Mr. Gilbert speak to the possibilities in the Rovie industrial area. And the new TSMC semiconductor plant is located just a short drive east of Peoria on the Loop 303. TSMC's consumption of labor, machinery, and concrete trucking resources in our own backyard are a hefty challenge. And now we're seeing headlines talking about the next wave of support facilities to that industry. And without a doubt, they'll need to proceed at breakneck speed, and most likely will have resources to ensure that they can achieve their goals. So I'm going to talk about 3 of the more common impacts you're hearing and reading about, and share just a few examples of what we're experiencing on Peoria projects. In the image above, I'm pleased to highlight some foundation construction at the Joe Max Operations Building. Most of us have seen the signs offering higher than minimum wage at our local food service establishments and in our retail big box stores. This has a direct cascading effect on construction, as trade contractors have to provide a higher and more attractive wage to entice workers into these entry-level construction trades. We've recently been made aware of a local electrical contractor who had to provide all of their long-tenured staff a $15 an hour bump in order to create room in their own pay scales to attract new hires, both entry-level and experienced, and not lose current tenured staff. Smaller projects and messy renovation projects are a challenge to receive more than 1 or 2 bids per trade, since the risks are higher and the rewards smaller than a longer duration, large ground-up project. So toilet paper and cleaning materials were the first consumer challenges we faced in COVID, but then we learned just how fast one stuck container ship in the Suez Canal could disrupt that fragile rotation of goods and supplies around the world. When the products did arrive, again, they arrived at ports overfilled with containers that were in queue because our trucking infrastructure was in high demand. These factors contribute to increased cost escalation, but also more importantly, to the timely receiving of these projects or products on the project site. Still too early, as I mentioned, to tell whether Omicron will introduce a second round of factory closures, both domestically or abroad. And these international and national challenges compound atop the local boom that I talked about. And heavy product demand in our market has moved costs from single-digit inflation to double-digit inflation. Time impacts are the third impact that I wanted to bring light to this evening. Whereas we used to put the shovel in the ground just days or within a week or two after we approved a project, we must task the contractor to buy out their subcontracts on the project up front to ensure that our orders are placed with these manufacturers and that we can begin the flow of products through the manufacturing pipeline and then arriving at our site on a delayed basis. These couple of months of pre-shovel trade buyout in combination with construction management staff having to prolong their duration on the job when products are missing or arrive late at the end of the project is adding as much as an average of about 3 months on some of our larger projects and is adding about 2 months on our smaller projects. And this additional construction management time is not without a cost impact. Once the construction's underway, those subcontractors who were ambitious enough to bid the job then struggle to send sizable enough crews to maintain the project schedule. And when you fall behind, overtime costs become a reality to have to face. On our Peoria projects, we've had to be both flexible and fair when facing these long delay times, which have ranged anywhere from 2 to 9 months. The Jomax Operations Building is still awaiting its steel package. You awarded that project at the beginning of summer last year. Fire station bay doors added an extra 2 months to the project. Wood, doors, frames, and hardware add between 12 and 26 weeks of additional time to projects. And then the big one, we've all been waiting on LED light fixtures and security access control components because they all involve computer chips on circuit boards. But despite the troubles, I'm pleased to report to the council that over the last year, we've still been able to complete the projects within a reasonable deviation from our schedules and still within the budgets once we locked in the construction projects. And the key word was once we locked in. We put a stake in the ground and could move forward. So if there are any questions on what I presented so far, I'm happy to pause. And if not, we can move into the brief update on the Finance Department call center improvements in City Hall.
Council, any questions or comments? It's funny that you had a picture of the Peoria Center for the Performing Arts because I remember when we were building that project and we had lots and lots of delays, couldn't get concrete. There was a big shortage in the United States. Actually, China was increasing their geography and all of the concrete in the entire world was going to China at the time, and it cost us a lot of time and money, extra delays. So appropriate picture there.
It did, and Mayor Carlett, not to age either you or I for our tenure here when I built it, that was a close rival to the time that we're experiencing now. Yeah. As fast as we were trying to reduce the project costs, the costs in the industry were outpacing us. And eventually we had to, then City Manager Terry Ellis put a fork in the ground and say, go and go quickly. So, yeah. Thank you. So the first project that I want to speak tonight under item 16R are the finance call center improvements in City Hall. This important project was approved by the council in the fiscal year 21 CIP, and it was phased over 2 capital years to allow us first to study the space needs of the department and to fully understand how we would operationally display such an important function during the construction period. The image on the slide, shows the current work environment of each customer service call taker, and the lead or the supervisor is located remote to the call environment. This project will improve finance suite space in City Hall, will displace an old break room to improve space efficiency for furnishings that we're going to add, provide ergonomic workstations and seating that meet our employee workspace standards, and will introduce a smaller vestibule-sized break area to acoustically isolate the call center from the rest of the work environment and the public counters. Between now and late March, we'll temporarily relocate the call center function to a training area in our Municipal Operations Center to allow construction to occur without a disruption in customer service. And because of longer furniture manufacturing times, we anticipate the project's completion will last as far out as into June. On your screen, you see a March 2022 date, and that's a reflection of the time frame necessary to achieve the first building products that we need to begin the improvements. So on the screen, we'll provide a total of 12 staff positions, one of which is co-located in the space for the lead or the supervisor. Furniture and seating amounts to almost $100,000 of the total capital budget. Portions of the cubicles will have glass partitions to allow for visual connections between the call takers and their supervisor, but also acoustical separation. We'll be investing in up-down mobility of our workstations to accommodate both sitting and standing work positions for these employees. The colorful inset image in the left-hand side of the screen will be a new vestibule-style coffee bar break environment where a call taker could remove their headset, go take a break, perhaps interact with another supervisor or other. But more importantly, it serves as an acoustical separation between the main office environment and nearby public counter and the call taker environment. And as I mentioned, because this project contains new doors, frames, and hardware, construction will not start for at least 8 weeks after the award of contract, allowing time for those first parts to arrive. So I'll bring this part of the presentation to close. Myself or Mr. Burke, who again is in the audience, if needed, are happy to answer any of the mayor and council's questions. Afterwards, we've presented the request that you see before you.
Thank you. Council, are there any questions, comments? Councilmember Hunt?
How many additional staff did you say we'd need to hire when this is complete?
Councilmember Hunt, I didn't speak to current staff level, and I don't believe that there are any intentions to hire any new additional people. Though I can't speak at the moment. Do we know the current head count? Yes, there are about 12 currently. So we maximize the space available for the employees that we have.
How many spaces did you say we'd create? 12?
There are 12 spaces, one of which is
so no
supervisor.
additional. Okay, thank you.
All right. Are there any additional questions? All right, so do you want us to go ahead and vote on this one, or do you want to make your presentation on the next one? What's your
We can
intent?
go ahead and vote on this one, and then I'll proceed forward. Thank you.
All right, council, do we have a motion on item 16R, budget amendment, use of reserves, finance call center improvements, city hall? We have a motion and a second. Council, please vote. And it passes unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. We'll now move to the presentation of the planned fire station number 5 renovations. This important project was also approved by the City Council in the fiscal year 2021 CIP and is the third in a series of fire station improvements and expansions in our fire medical department. Fire station number 5 is located at the Pinnacle Peak Public Safety Facility. It's co-located with the police department. And it was built in the year 2000. Staff began the early studies of this expansion while finishing the construction of fire station number 2 earlier this past year. While building 2 new detached apparatus bays will undertake over 4,000 square foot of interior renovations to provide additional crew bunk rooms and restrooms, expanded crew office and fitness space, and a new battalion chief and captain's dorms and offices. We notified approximately 60 property owners within the traditional notification distances, and we received no public comment. Like the previous fire stations we have expanded, this construction will occur while the station is occupied, ensuring an uninterrupted level of service. And also, like the finance call center improvement, this project will not put its first shovel in the ground for at least 2 months after the council's award, while we scurry to lock in those subcontracts that I spoke of, thereby starting all of our building materials orders. In the site plan image of the Pinnacle Peak Public Safety that you see on the screen, I've highlighted the areas where the construction will take place. Areas in green on the south side of the building, toward the lower part of your screen, are the 2 new detached apparatus bays. Areas in yellow are the new interior renovations. You can see they comprise a large portion of the interior of the facility. And areas in blue are the new access-controlled site security fencing area to protect the rear of our bays from vehicle trespasses. In the rendering on the bottom of this image, you can see the new bays from the Lake Pleasant Parkway vantage point. that were shown in green on the previous slide, that they're retreated rearward on the south side of the building, and they're angled into the south driveway to allow apparatus like you see in the upper right to exit out of our same emergency traffic signal on Lake Pleasant Parkway. The rescue vehicle that you see in the image in the upper right is the size of the apparatus bay, or apparatus that these bays are designed to hold, and that's consistent also with what we did at Fire Station number 2. These shorter bays accommodate the shorter wheelbase vehicles, which gives the fire medical department greater flexibility in the main bays to rotate around the larger apparatus like the engines and the ladder trucks. So I'll bring this portion of the presentation to close. Myself and Mr. Brewster, who's in the audience, are happy to answer any of the mayor and council's questions, after which we've presented the request of the council on the screen in front of you. Thank you.
Council, are there any questions or comments? I have one. We are making the new bays smaller for the smaller vehicles, but if we made them large enough to fit the largest engines that we have, wouldn't they be able to accommodate growth in the future without us having to add more engine bays?
Yes, ma'am, they would, but unfortunately we don't have the land area. And in many cases, the facilities that we have built are built to a size, there's very little wiggle room. We were creative on the backside of Fire Station number 2, and Fire Station number 2 was designed to be expanded. Fire Station number 3 at Amelia Zola had enough area along the west side of 83rd Avenue that we could bump, but this particular location only has a certain amount of area on the south side of the facility, and we have to consider that they share a common living environment. Those in the small apparatus bays, their equipment that they're running out to when the alarm goes off, needs to be kind of contiguous to those living environment, just as the main bays are in the main station. So Mr. Brewster and I have gotten very creative in providing these solutions and kind of filled up the site as much as we could.
Thank you. All right, council, any other discussion? All right, do I have a motion on item 17R?
Second.
A motion and a second, please vote. And it passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, the next item is called to the public on non-agenda items, and I have received no speaker request forms. So we will now move on to reports from the city manager. Mr. Tyne.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Appreciate the opportunity. One item I wanted to mention quickly is that we are putting together our team with the police department and our neighborhood and human services to undertake our point-in-time count. Point-in-time count is a regional effort that is done to really account for those that are experiencing homelessness in the city of Peoria. This is an important effort to better understand what is exactly those that are experiencing, who these individuals are, how they were placed in those circumstances. By having that information can very much assist us to give our own unique response to that, and also to share that information with the Continuity of Care group at the Maricopa Association of Governments and really take on a more of a regional effort. So just to be clear, that Police Department and Neighborhood and Human Services will begin that at 5 a.m. on January 25th, a Tuesday, and we will certainly keep you informed of what is turning out to be very much a growing regional and national issue. So on top of that, I did also note to City Council recently some of the recent pressures on our workforce as a result of recent rise in COVID-19 cases. Just received information earlier today. That number has gone down for the city as far as the workforce that are experiencing those kinds of circumstances. That's very good news, but we're not out of the woods yet. Like every employer, we're not immune to service disruptions. We did have a one-day delay in recycling for 3 of our routes earlier. In other areas, we have been able to adapt to help maintain those key services, and that's really a testament to the hard work and flexibility of our staff, who I'm so proud of. That said, we hope to weather this current strain, and we will keep you informed of any other service disruptions and what we're seeing with our workforce going forward. So that's all I have, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. I would now like to offer some report time to our Youth Council liaisons. Liaison Rodriguez, did you have any comments?
Yes, Mayor. Recently at our last meeting, we had more talks about engagement, and our 90% of our board came together for the MLK Day event, and we created our own booth, and that allowed the community and us to engage with each other, and so we ended up creating a mural of Dr. King, so that was really cool. And if you want to see pictures, I can definitely show you. We also worked with one of our partners, is D-Squared Home for Homeless, which they target homeless teens. And we helped pack hygiene bags together for the homeless, and we ended up creating 500 bags. So it was really great.
Yeah.
I think that's all I have so far. Thank you.
Thank you. That is great work. And Youth Council Liaison, Fiera?
Mayor and Council, thank you. I just want to give a quick update on the National League of Cities Congressional City Conference that is taking place in Washington, D.C. As of right now, we have 7 confirmed youth representatives and 2 city chaperones joining us. We have a meeting this Thursday updating us on the small details that are to go into the visit, and we're all very excited. So I'll have more to update on next meeting after the meeting. So thank you.
Good. Hope there'll be good weather for you there. And there being no further business, we are adjourned.